Travels with Phil continues from Fort Necessity in southwestern Pennsylvania. Now, most likely you've never heard of this spot. It's out in the woods here in Pennsylvania. Pretty area. You can see some earthworks over here. These would be breastworks. They would have come up about breast high. This is a small fort. Well, the events that took place around here, mid-1750s, led to a lot of activity. Basically, George Washington was out here with some Virginians building a road going over toward what is now Pittsburgh. They heard that there were some Frenchmen in the area who were trying to come down to tell George Washington that he shouldn't be out here because they considered this French territory. Well, George Washington was notified of the French by a Lenape, Delaware, called Half King. Or at least that was the title that the British gave him. So, George Washington comes up on the French's men encampment, which would be off in this way a couple miles. And they're just waking up. There's arguments as to who shot first. The French said that they were ambushed and massacred. The British said that the French shot first. The French were on a diplomatic mission. Washington thought they might be there to attack. Well, the lead man, whose name was Jumonville, or Jumonville, if you want to pronounce it that way, was killed by the Half King. But the French felt that this was an assassination because he was an important man. French forces, under Jumonville's half-brother, decide that they're going to come after George Washington's men in revenge. George Washington builds this right here, Fort Necessity, in this grand meadow, a charming place to have an encounter, according to him. The French eventually show up, surround the area, they start shooting. The Virginians, British colonists, are trapped inside here. Lots of them are killed. Eventually the French give George Washington and his troops the opportunity to surrender. All they have to do is just give up and leave. George Washington signed some papers to that effect. Well, what he doesn't realize is the papers are written in French. The interpreter he has spoke primarily Dutch. And in the papers, George Washington admits that he assassinated Jumonville. Deliberate, intentional act. Washington doesn't realize that. It's a rainy day. The ink's sort of run. The interpreter, who speaks mostly Dutch, doesn't quite understand everything or can't see it. And this causes a great deal of consternation between the two. The French and the British really start arguing and battling over who's going to get the juncture of the Monongahela, where it turns into the Ohio, what is now called Pittsburgh. This leads to the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, which pitted France against Great Britain. That eventually led to the British winning, and they get a lot of territory over the French. The British want to pay for the war, which is very, very expensive. They start raising taxes. People in Boston don't like these taxes. Start throwing tea into the bay. You got the American Revolution. So all of those activities started because of activities here featuring George Washington, starting right around here, Fort Necessity in western Pennsylvania.